Have you ever been captivated by the tales of King Arthur and his knights? Well, guess what? There might just be more to this story than meets the eye. Tucked away in a cave, possibly the final resting place of this legendary figure has been discovered. No, we're not spinning yarns here. We're talking about an archaeological find that could link the dots between myth and reality. Was King Arthur the hero he's chalked up to be? Or is he just a character from bedtime stories? Buckle up, history detectives, because we're about to sift through the evidence that could change the way we look at this age-old legend, history of King Arthur. Peeling back the layers of time, we uncover a tale as old as the hills, the story of a leader named Arthur. Picture this: 6th century Britain, a time of turmoil and relentless Saxon invasions. The Welsh poems of that era paint Arthur as a valiant chieftain, rallying the Britons in a fierce struggle for their land. Fast forward to the 12th century, and Geoffrey of Monmouth hits the scene with a bombshell of a book. In it, he spins a yarn about Uther Pendragon, Arthur's dad, who, with a little magical help from Merlin, disguises himself to meet Igraine at Tintagel, resulting in Arthur's birth. Though Geoffrey's accounts are taken with a pinch of salt today, seen more as a cocktail of folklore and artistic flair, his tales were once the talk of the town. They even convinced a certain Richard, Earl of Cornwall, to trade valuable lands just to own a piece of this storied cliffside, where he built a castle, not for defense, but for legacy. And the allure of Arthur didn't just end there. Each author and storyteller since Geoffrey has added their own seasoning to the saga, from the illustrious Excalibur, the iconic Round Table, to the tangled love affair of Guinevere and Lancelot and the tragic Battle of Camlan. Every retelling from medieval epics to T.H. White's The Once and Future King, from Mallory's Le Morte d'Arthur to modern flicks like The Green Knight, each spins the legend anew. What's the secret sauce that keeps Arthur's legend on the boil? According to Leah Tether, a scholar in medieval studies, it's a story with a bit of everything: flawed heroes, wild quests, and a story that morphs with the times. Raluca Radulescu, another expert in medieval literature, reckons it's Arthur's moral code that draws us in, a beacon of integrity in a murky world. But strip away the legend, the lore, the quests, and the chivalry, and one gnawing question remains: was there a real Arthur? Did a living, breathing person inspire Geoffrey's literary hero? That riddle keeps us guessing, blurring the lines between history and myth. It's this blend of fact and fiction, this dance of truth and tale, that keeps the legend of King Arthur not just alive, but utterly captivating. The Tintagel Castle. Let's journey to a place where history and myth intertwine. Tintagel Castle, perched on the rugged coastline of Cornwall. This majestic site isn't just a pile of old stones, it's a puzzle piece in the grand tale of King Arthur. Now imagine finding clues in the ground that whisper tales from the Arthurian legend. Exciting, right? Recent digs at Tintagel have been like detective work, where archaeologists, led by the curious minds of Win Scutt and his team from English Heritage, have unearthed secrets that make the past almost tangible. Picture this: Tintagel, bustling with life in the 6th century, at the same time that Arthur would have reigned, if he wasn't just a figment of our collective imagination, that is. Carbon dating, a trick that historians from the 1930s could only dream of, has placed Tintagel firmly in the Arthurian timeline. But it's not just about timelines. It's about the signs of a society that was well off and worldly. Imagine holding a piece of glass from a goblet that once may have held Spanish wine, or a fragment of a French cup. Items that shout out that Tintagel was no hermit's hideaway, but a fortress buzzing with action, connecting Cornwall to corners of the ancient world. And the houses they've found, not the simple huts you might picture in the Dark Ages, but sturdy homes with wooden beams that could have had a second story, a sign of wealth and comfort. So much for the dark in Dark Ages, right? We're talking about a Tintagel that was a hub, maybe even home to thousands of people who were far from uncultured or impoverished. Now get this: a stone slab with just a letter A carved into it. It might not seem like much, but in a place echoing with Arthurian lore, it's like finding a breadcrumb on a trail that could lead to something big. Could it hint at Arthur? Or is it just another piece of history's puzzle? That's the fun of it all. It keeps us guessing. All these discoveries at Tintagel, proof of its age, signs of wealth and connections, that tantalizing stone slab, they don't give us a clear answer, but they sure spice up the legend. And while we can't say for certain if King Arthur was real, these finds make us wonder and dream. They add layers to a story that's been told and retold, a story that maybe, just maybe, has a grain of truth hidden within it. Secrets of the Cadbury Castle. Picture this, a majestic hill in South Somerset, standing tall with secrets from centuries past wrapped in its roots. Cadbury Castle, this enigmatic mound, isn't just another hill fort. It might just hold the keys to one of the greatest legends of all time, King Arthur and his fabled Camelot. Now there's a tug of war between fact and folklore, but that's where the thrill lies, doesn't it? The hill itself is ancient, a witness to human toil since the Stone Age. Imagine warriors and chieftains of old standing where we can stand today. As we sift through the whispers of the past, some historians suggest King Arthur was no mere myth. Perhaps he was a real-deal Roman-affiliated leader. In the late 1960s, archaeologists dug deep into Cadbury Castle's belly, and guess what they found? Reinforcements dating back to the 6th century. That's prime Arthur time. The remnants of a grand hall and what could be a church spark wild questions. Could this have been a royal seat, an elite palace of sorts? If there's any truth to King Arthur's existence, a stronghold like Cadbury Castle fits the bill for Camelot, with its sturdy ramparts and commanding view. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. Cadbury Castle sits near Glastonbury Tor, steeped in its own mystical lore, often linked to Avalon, where the legend says Arthur's final resting place might be. The view from Cadbury's peak, Glastonbury Tor, stands clear on the horizon, a geographical nod that fuels the fires of legend even more. And the local lingo? It's like a nod from history. The nearby villages with camel in their names, the River Cam, they all seem to echo Camelot. Is it a coincidence, or are these linguistic breadcrumbs from the past? Now hold on to your hats. Local myths talk of an almost magical slumber party, where King Arthur and his knights are said to be snoozing under the hill, biding their time until England calls them to action again. Imagine that for a Midsummer Night's Dream. While scholars may debate the reality of King Arthur, the blend of archaeology and legend makes Cadbury Castle a hotspot for the romantics, the dreamers, the seekers of stories that have outlasted generations. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Deep beneath the ancient hills of Albion, where legend and history blur, a remarkable discovery emerged from the shadows of time. For centuries, the tale of King Arthur had been etched into the hearts and minds of those who dared to believe in the once and future king. Now, hushed whispers danced through the corridors of academia as a clandestine group of archaeologists unearthed what was deemed impossible: the body of King Arthur, preserved in regal repose within a hidden chamber, undisturbed since the Dark Ages. The photograph, which somehow slipped through the fingers of secrecy, showed a figure clad in armor that bore the weight of ages, a once mighty king laying with a serenity that belied the tumultuous period he lived through. The gold-embellished crown resting upon his head and the sword clasped firmly in his gauntleted hands sparked a global frenzy. Was it Excalibur that lay with him, the legendary blade bestowed upon him by the Lady of the Lake? Skeptics rallied, dismissing the leak as a hoax, a play for attention in a world hungry for wonder. But for those who believed, this image was a beacon of magic returning to the modern age, a testament to a hero whose story had transcended time. In the hallowed halls of the unknown site, history was rewritten, and the myth of the great King Arthur revived once more, shrouded in mystery and 1,000 unanswered questions. The history of the Round Table. If you think legends don't leave footprints in history, let's talk about the Winchester Round Table. This iconic table is not a relic from King Arthur's days, but it holds a story that's been reshaped over centuries, much like clay in the hands of different potters, each molding it to suit their time's narrative. King Edward the Byrne, a man with a deep fascination for Arthurian tales, is believed to have ordered its creation in the late 13th century. Now, this wasn't just for fun. By tying his reign to the heroics of King Arthur, Edward was doing some old-school branding, crafting an image of strength and unity for his kingdom. Fast forward to the Tudor era, and here comes Henry VIII, repainting the table to echo his image and slapping on the Tudor rose. Why? Well, it's like wearing a superhero cape to remind people of the hero you want to be seen as. Henry wasn't just sprucing up the decor. He was linking his dynasty to a legend, a statement of power and divine right, in full Tudor fashion. The table's makeover was a stroke of political genius. It was a time when the Tudors were keen on reinforcing their legitimacy. And what better way than to draw a line straight back to Britain's most famous king? It was a visual power move, intertwining myth, history, and some serious royal PR. And get this, the Winchester Round Table was also a target practice for Cromwellian soldiers who in 1645 took their best shots at the king's face painted on it. Talk about a dramatic twist in its history. Later, after an intense period of research, the table was rehung in 1980, not just as an artifact, but as a storytelling canvas that carries the weight of a nation's quest for identity and legacy. While the Winchester Round Table never saw Arthur and his knights jostling elbows, its true tale lies in its journey through England's power struggles and its survival as a symbol of how enticing the Arthurian allure has been through the ages. And remember, just like the Winchester Round Table has stood the test of time, our fascination with the tales of old continues, a testament to the enduring power of legend. The Sutton Hoo helmet. Diving deep into the heart of Anglo-Saxon England, the discovery of the Sutton Hoo helmet was like unearthing a time capsule that whispers secrets from the era of the fabled King Arthur. Imagine in 1939, beneath the Suffolk soil, lay a treasure more than just gold and garnet. It was a window into a time that has fed legends for centuries. This regal helmet, found amidst the remains of a majestic ship burial, serves up a feast of clues about the life and times when Arthurian tales spun their web in the minds of the people. Picture a society led by a dominant elite, where such opulent burials were the norm for the ruling class. It's like opening a book and finding the characters of Arthur's court leaping out. The kings, the knights, each with their own heraldic emblems, each with their own saga. Now imagine the helmet itself, a piece that wouldn't look out of place among the Knights of the Round Table. It's not just a piece of armor, it's an embodiment of power, intricately designed with a face mask, mustache, and brows, reminiscent of the old Roman cavalry. This suggests that the Anglo-Saxons, while forging their own identity, were still draped in the cloak of Roman influence, echoing the stories where Arthur's Britain is a tapestry of Roman and Celtic threads. And it's not just for show. The symbolism woven into the helmet's design is rich with meaning. Take the boar motif. Valued across Germanic and Norse mythologies, it stands for bravery and protection. It parallels the Holy Grail in Arthurian legend, both sought-after symbols of divine favor and guardianship. But what about the craftsmanship? The helmet's mix of iron, bronze, and gold isn't just for looks. It tells of a society rich in trade and expertise in metallurgy. This reflects the world of Arthur's knights, who journeyed across distant lands, often returning with tales of opulence and encounters with diverse peoples. The artwork on the Sutton Hoo helmet is distinctive too. With interlacing patterns and animal motifs, it's a prime example of the insular art style, a melting pot of native British and imported artistry. Just as the helmet reflects the fusion of cultural influences, so does the legend of King Arthur, a blend that showcases the cultural melting pot of early medieval Britain. Finally, as a piece of military gear, the helmet shines a light on the martial aspect of the Anglo-Saxon world. It symbolizes the martial prowess and valor, much like the battles and duels at the heart of Arthurian legend. With Arthur's Excalibur and the knight's gallantry, the ethos of the time was steeped in the spirit of warriors, an early form of the chivalric code that would later be fully developed in the medieval period. In summary, the Sutton Hoo helmet is not just an archaeological artifact, it's a storyteller. It informs us of the social, religious, and cultural fabric of the Anglo-Saxon period, a tapestry closely knit with the tales of King Arthur. The Sutton Hoo helmet is a tangible connection to a time that, until its discovery, lay shrouded in myth and mystery.